Welcome to Echo 101, Study Session 8, Efficiency and Exchange. Introduction. In this study session, you'll be exposed to the conditions under which unregulated markets generate the largest possible economic surplus. We will also try to provide explanation to why attempts to interfere with market outcomes often leads to unintended and undesirable consequences. Learning outcomes. When you have studied this session, you should be able to 1. Discover the points of efficient market equilibrium. 2. Discuss the causes of market imperfection. 3. Point out ways of correcting market imperfections. Market equilibrium and efficiency. Market equilibrium is said to be efficient if the prevailing price and quantity cannot take any other values than their equilibrium values without making at least some people better off and others worse off. This concept is also known as Pareto efficiency. At a Pareto efficient equilibrium, no change is possible that will help some people without harming others. Efficient market equilibrium can be illustrated using the cost-benefit principle. Let us assume a market in which price is below the equilibrium level, as illustrated in figure 8.1. From the diagram, at a price OP1, sellers offer OQ1, and the buyer is willing to pay OP2 for an additional amount of the good. One will also observe that at OP1, excess demand of Q1, Q2 has already been created. Let us assume further that in order to satisfy the demand of some of the people that are eager to get the product, sellers now decide to raise the price up to OP1, and this merely costs the seller OP1 to produce. One would notice eventually that the difference between OP1 and 1 is the gain called economic surplus that sellers have benefited, while buyers who are eager to satisfy their demand by paying OP1 have also benefited economic surplus, which is the difference between OP2 and OP1. In sum, the transaction has created an economic surplus with the difference between OP2 and OP1. On the other hand, what happens if the price is held above the equilibrium price, as shown in figure 8.2? At a price OP3, excess supply is created. Suppose the dissatisfied sellers now reduce the price to OP3 to buyers who value the good most highly. The buyers who would have been willing to pay OP3 are now better off with the difference between OP3 and OP2, while the seller who would have been willing to sell as little as OP1 will be better off with the difference between OP3 and OP1. Here also, economic surplus of P3, P1 has been created. For the analysis, none of the economic agent is armed with that transaction. Indeed, it is only at the market equilibrium price that a surplus enhancing transaction cannot be designed. Sources of market failure. Market is considered to have failed in relation to the following reasons. Number 1, externality. The market will not lead to social efficiency if the actions of producers or consumers affect people other than themselves. 2. Public good. This is a category of goods that the free market, whether perfect or imperfect, will underproduce or may not produce at all. They are called public goods. 3. Imperfect information. Market always assumes that consumers, firms, and factor suppliers have adequate knowledge of cost and benefit. In the real world, there is often a great deal of ignorance and uncertainty that result in imperfect information on the part of actors. 4. Imperfect markets. Whenever markets are imperfect, whether as pure monopoly or as some forms of imperfect competition, the market will fail to equate marginal social benefit and marginal social cost. In this situation, Pareto optimality will be difficult to achieve. The cost of preventing adjustment. Price ceilings. Price ceiling is a law or regulation that prevents sellers from charging more than a specified amount. Two different scenarios will be considered here. One is when there is no price ceiling, and second is when there is an imposition of price ceiling. First, let us consider the situation when there is no price ceiling. Figure 8.3. A consumer surplus is the difference between what a consumer would be willing to pay and what he actually pays. Alternatively, it is the area between the demand curve and the market price as indicated on the diagrams, which is PE0, P2. Whereas the producer surplus is the difference between what a seller would have been willing to accept as price and what he actually takes. Also, it is the area between market price and the supply curve. The implication of the existence of price ceiling are illustrated in figure 8.4. OP1 is the price ceiling that has been imposed. Thus, only OQ1 will be supplied by the seller. Looking at the diagram, the imposition of price ceiling has actually reduced the total economic surplus. In fact, the producer's surplus is badly affected, while that of the consumer will still remain the same. What this implies is that the loss in total economic surplus is equal to the less in producer surplus. The producer surplus now is OP1B. Taxes and efficiency. Whenever a tax is being imposed, the burden of taxes may not necessarily fall entirely on the person paying the tax. For example, when taxes are imposed on sellers, the burden is often shared with buyers. Given the initial supply and demand curve as illustrated in figure 8.5, with no tax, market is cleared at a price PE and QE is bought and sold. With a tax imposition collected from a seller, consumers end up paying OP2 instead of OPE, while a seller receives OP1. Equilibrium quantity falls from OQE to OQ. It is clear from the diagram that the burden is being shared both by the sellers and buyers of the goods. It is important, however, to note that The burden of tax need not fall equally on buyers and sellers. This will, of course, depend on the degree of elasticity of demand and supply. When the supply curve for a good is perfectly elastic, the burden of a tax collected from sellers falls entirely on buyers. Summary. In this study session, you were exposed to the conditions under which unregulated markets generate the largest possible economic surplus. We went further to discuss causes of market imperfection and pointed out ways of correcting these imperfections.